All right, people will come. All right. Good morning, everyone on this side. As we are waiting for our friends to come slowly from the other side of the world where it's evening, and Jay just shared that the president in Ghana, if I'm not mistaken, is delivering a message. So maybe that's where people are listening to him. Anyway, today's lesson it's not a lesson today. It's a review of what we have done in the past 2 weeks, a little review of that, and then something new that I have never done before. I've been working on it. It's been part of the program from very beginning. We have always talked about, particularly in primary schools where we present the program, but they've never had time or the resources to do it. So we will see how it will proceed. Review. So we started 2 weeks ago. The program was brought to you by Global Team Foundation and Mind Treasures. Global Team Foundation from Ghana and Mind Treasures from US. We had about 80 registrations from 8 countries. Countries are listed in there. There were 2 groups from Nigeria that began to participate in the program. Merciful Hearts Foundation for Widows and Orphans in Abuja, and then also a Financial Investment Society Club in University of Abuja. So it was great, and we know that some of the friends have had really difficulty connecting online, but we know that they are with us in here. Majority of participants have been adults and families. I think we have a few children in the program. And our goal was to look at financial illiteracy, which is a global pandemic after Corona and maybe the racial injustice that we are seeing currently in our societies. So we started with we started the program with the spiritual foundation of wealth and finances. We looked at 3 goals that are set for every human being on earth. As soon as we are conceived in the mother's womb, and then there is no end. Our legacy will continue. So it was to know God and worship Him and thank His presence. To prepare every stage of life, we prepared for the next stage. In the mother's womb, we prepared for this world. Here, as a child, we're preparing for youth, for adulthood, for retirement. And then finally, we are working on creating being a service to humanity and leaving a legacy for everyone. So from the sacred writings, all of them, this is from the Baha'i writing, but it is reflected everywhere, that our soul will progress through the worlds of God until it attains the presence of God. And the way that happens is that through the bounty and grace of the Lord alone, through the intercession and the sincere prayers of other human souls, or lastly, through the charities and important good works which are performed in its name. So one of the goals was to leave a legacy, to make sure that we don't just live our lives on this planet Earth and then don't leave anything, both materially for our children, for our grandchildren and everyone, but also leaving a positive effect that will continue throughout as our soul progresses through the world of God. And Baha'u'llah says, let your vision be world embracing. Even if we start with a small project, a small social action project, we need to think big. This is definitely something that when we started Mind Treasures, we were not thinking global. It started as a workshop for our children in a primary school. That's what we started with. And here we are, 15 years later, we are having a global outreach and effect, thanks to everyone who's been participating in the program. One of the things that we have done, as you've seen throughout the program, we didn't officially talk about it, but we have redefined wealth. So in the dictionary, wealth is considered as a large amount of money and material possessions. Rich is defined as the person who's having lots of money and material possessions. And then also wealthy in English language, wealthy very much has the same meaning. We're trying to change these definitions to something new. So wealth, we're considering as any resources, including but not limited to knowledge, expertise, time, money, as well as physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual muscles. These are the wealth, some of them we have, and some of them we gain throughout our lives. Then, based on this, the definition of rich becomes a person who possesses any or all of the above. That is a rich person. As we talked about, we are born rich. And then wealthy in our mind is the person, not the person that has a lot of these, but a person who has possessed these skills and desires to obtain and manage and utilize the resources for illuminating the world. So not only creating a safe and secure financial and material life for ourselves, for our family, but then also thinking about those that don't have enough. This quote is also from the Baha'i writings where it says, wealth is praiseworthy in the highest degree. It is acquired by an individual's own efforts and grace of God in commerce, agriculture, art, and industry, and if it be expanded for philanthropic purposes. So that is our goal. That is what we have done. Just a quick review of the things that we have learned in the past. I'm going to switch over to our facilitator workbook. So we started with human treasures. We learned about character traits, their importance, how do we develop them, how do they relate to finances and other aspects of life. We learned how to set goals in patience, whether it's a personal goal, it's a family goal, or a community goal. These are everything that we learned that if we have patience, we can achieve all of our goals in life, but we need to have perseverance, we need to have determination, and we need to have patience. We learned about moderation, which is creating a balance between our time, our activities, our money, a lot of different things. And why it's so important to be able to have charts that we keep track of different aspects of life. Again, time management, budgeting, and so forth. We learned about responsibility, which will lead us into the next segment of what I will be presenting today. We are responsible for our own actions, for our own responsibility at home, at work, in the school. But then also we have a responsibility toward the community to make sure that we leave this world and our communities where we live in a better place than where we came on board. Accountability was basis of our borrowing system to make sure that we borrow responsibly and we are accountable not for looking good for other people, not to show off what we have, and not to compete with people, and definitely not to buy things that we cannot afford, borrow to buy things that we don't really need. The next two lessons about thankfulness and respect, we learn how to be respectful and thankful as our current generation is becoming anything but thankful and respectful. A lot of it possibly because of the technology that's available to us. We feel like our young generation is having a sense of entitlement. I should have this. My internet is slow. I don't have the latest cell phone. Somebody else has. Why is it that I don't have? So those are the concepts that we learn in respect and thankful. Sustainability is actually a new lesson plan. It's about environment that I'm working on. We're working on that. It hasn't been, but we did look at it a little bit, how plastic is destroying our society and our community. We talked about being generous to oneself, to the community, and again, we're being generous to our own self in the future. That is retirement, and how we need to invest our time and money in different resources for the future. The truthfulness was about how we get deceived in society when we go shopping, when we are trying to make investments. There are many people that uh, give us advice that's not necessarily good for us. We need to do an independent investigation of truth, just to see what is right and what is not right for us. And what we did yesterday, we loved the creativity, everyone's talent show. It was everyone's talent. And we saw yesterday, there was another one. I think Felicia's daughter. She's so flexible that she could do the stuff that I don't think I could even do when I was young. So it was great to see all of that, all the talent shows. We touched upon investments, budgeting, let's see, what else? Banking services a little bit. So these are the things that we have learned. And today we're going to bring it all together. Everything that we have learned is mainly to achieve our goals, personal, family, and community goals. So that's where we will be concentrating on. If anyone has any question about what we have done over the past 5 and 4, 9 sessions, please post it in the chat. If you have any questions that we can answer, if not, we will move on to today's presentation. From Mind Treasures team, anybody would like to add anything to the review while I catch my breath a little bit? Have a drink of water. Anybody like to add anything? Everyone is quiet today. All right, I know it's Friday. So this is where we ended up yesterday. Entrephilanthropy. Again, we define entrephilanthropy as entrepreneurship for philanthropic purposes. Act of organizing and managing enterprises and ventures with considerable initiative, passion, and risk to accumulate resources, all different types of wealth that we talked about, for the purpose of altruistic concern for human welfare and advancement, usually manifested by utilization of such resources for endowment of institutions of learning and other socially useful purposes. So that is what we are defining. And our idea is that everyone from childhood can enter this process. Often people have asked, what is the difference between entrephilanthropy and social enterprise, or those who, there are many people that have started in as a corporate person or as an employee. And when they receive a lot of money and they retire either from their jobs or they decide to do something, that is an after effect. Entrephilanthropy, our idea is that even from childhood, we are being mentored, we are being accompanied, not necessarily mentored, but we are being accompanied to think about challenges and how do we apply our learning, the academic learning, to these challenges. I have even imagined a Mind Treasure university where it's completely different than the way current educational systems work. Idea that it's far in the future is that we learn math, physics, sciences, but throughout our academic years, that's all we learn. We do not learn the application of such education. Why not start with challenges that exist in our neighborhood while we are learning the academics and see how we can apply those? And based on what we have seen in classes, I think it's doable. So I'd like to ask our staff if we can think of examples of, I have one, examples of when we do the responsibility and community challenges in the classroom. If you have any example that you like to share, how young children can get involved, young children and youth have been involved, or the other ideas that they have. Again, I don't want to be the only one who's talking today. So If any of our staff would like to share, please chime in, unmute your microphone and come in, please. Otherwise, I'll keep on going. All right. So let's start with some examples of our community challenges and think about other challenges that you have shared in the past. So in the chat, I pulled these out of some of the online workbooks from the participants here. So if you'd like to share something that is not here, please put what are the challenges, either small or large, in your community that you think as a small group, people can get together and start working on it. It could be something that has to do with COVID-19, something else. So please put that in the chat so we have more examples. These are the few things that I pulled. One of the items was the road in my area is bad, but is beyond our income as a community. Well, let's see if we might be able to do something. Often we think that challenges are challenges are too big beyond our capacity. But if we break it down into smaller segments, it becomes a lot more manageable. I'm not sure how many watched the 3 videos that I posted about Marquise, the young man who took our program in 2008 when he was 8 years old, and everything that he has done throughout his life. That is a perfect example. I'm not saying that that is what we can produce in every person. Actually, in 15 years that we have done, Marquise has been the only one that has done so much. But we are sure that he has engaged and he has inspired many others. Another one here that's been listed is about youth, as how they are rebellious, how they are not groomed, and the solution that has been provided is to work it's their parents. And I think, if this is my personal belief, is that often parents even lack the skills to teach their children, to groom their children, because our time is fasting our society is changing so fast because of the internet. I see Raymond has his hands up. If you have a question or comment, please put it in the chat. Garbage disposal in my community, that we see everywhere that we go, even in the developed societies, we see that as an issue. School washrooms, that's one that we actually discussed in a 2nd grade class. Since nobody else wants to share, in one of my classes, the students were talking about that the washrooms are dirty, and this was mainly boys that they were complaining that their washroom is dirty. Their solution was to go to the principal's office and ask why the custodian is not continually cleaning the bathrooms. So I asked them to, let's discuss this and see who is using the bathroom, who is making it dirty before we go to the principal. The group said, well, it is not us, but it is other people. So it was very easy for them to blame it on others. And then we asked, so why is it dirty? At the bathroom, we use these stalls, or then we use whatever the wash area. And their response was that, well, the boys are not aiming correctly. So their urine is going all over the place. And when we consulted more on it, they realized that they were the ones who were making the bathrooms dirty. So instead of going to the principal and the custodian, they decided to pay a little more attention. Sometimes it is as simple as that. So in the chat, I see a couple of things from, let me see. So Simon said, in my community, most workers have been laid off because of the COVID-19, because of all the work for people. He also says single parents with 4 or 5 children and with difficulties to support. I think Barry has something to share. Barry, you're unmuted, or do you need me to unmute?
Yeah, I just managed to unmute myself.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Did you want to share something?
Um, well, I was the one that said something about Marquise, but in one of my classes, when we were talking about wasting resources, the students came up with the concern of how it was a common practice at their school for the janitor to wash down the lunch area, and it was using a lot of water, and they could see that it was wasting a lot of water. So very much like the example you just gave, their solution was that they could speak with all of the students and have the students be conscious of their trash and making sure that they picked up after themselves, so that what really had to be, what water had to be used for was very limited. So that was another kind of a simple example, but very impactful, that they all got to see that they could be part of the solution.
And often that's all it takes, just looking away from the problems and see who is creating. I also had another example in one class when we watched the video about food being thrown away, the chicken a la carte video. The next day, the next session, students said we used to have food fights at school because in many of the schools here, breakfast and lunch is provided to a certain group of students at no cost. So they had no idea that they were wasting the food. So after watching that video, they decided not to have any more food fights. So sometimes solutions can be very simple. One of the other, this is a challenge, the last one, primary school children's literacy level, is one that's very dear to my heart, our staff knows. And we have tried so many times to come up with a solution. We think we know what it is, but we have never been actually been able to implement. There are many students here I'm just talking about San Diego, that at grade 4 or 5 or even higher, they do not read, write, or do math at their level. And based on research, if a student is not proficient in all these levels, in all these topics, by end of grade 3, they are very much done with life. They cannot concentrate from grade 4 and up. That causes them to get distracted because they don't understand, and they get involved with a lot of issues outside of the school. So, and we have tried to do this, but and I think the only reason that we haven't been successful is because we need to concentrate on finances and not something else, not get distracted. But from time to time, we do look at this. All right. So this part from here on, what I'm about to present is the very new part of the program. It does come from a document from the worldwide Baha'i community that provides some guideline on how to approach social action projects. It's been, some of the principles have been, a lot of the principles have been in work since the Baha'i community was established in 1844. And some of them have become more, some of these principles have become more prevalent within the last 50 years. That there's a lot more of social action right now. And I have been communicating with some. I will share the full document. It's 12 pages. And some of it pertains only to the Baha'i community, but a lot of the principles I felt is very much can be used here. Just make this a little larger. So the principle, let me see what's in the chat. There are a few things before we continue on. So Raymond says, I think people should educate, advise, and help her to set up a business and take good care of the children as well as business. All right. Hazel says, wasting food instead of throwing in trash. The non-perishable can be saved for snacks later when they are ready, really hungry, fruits and etc. So there are a lot of ideas. Now today, hopefully we're going to learn how to actually implement, because we see challenges, we think we have an idea, but how do we actually implement the ideas? So I will dive in to the details of all these actions all these items that are listed in here. Some of them we are already doing. You have seen it in our program. Some of them may be very new and totally different at how our current society works. And as our staff know, and throughout my life, I have always been about changing the rules. I also have a philosophy that rules are made to be challenged, to be changed, because if we don't challenge the rules, nothing will change. We will continue doing same thing over and over and over again. And sometimes we have to be persistent about how systems are changed. Again, what I'm about to present is a process that can be applied into any project that we are doing or the participants are doing here. Emmanuel, who's from GTF Foundation program, he shared the project that he has. He sent me a video. We will maybe talk a little bit about it, and hopefully we can consult together and apply these principles. And one of the aspects of the program that you have seen, and we talked about it over and over again, we are providing a framework. As you saw, we never said, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And particularly whenever we were asked what to do about investments, we are not investment advisors here in the US, let alone somewhere on the other side of the world. But what we have provided, the ABCs of wealth that you have seen, is a framework that can be applied anywhere. You take the principles. The fact that everyone needs to have a personal or family budget, I don't think anybody can argue that. What you put in there, that's yours. The fact that we need to leave a legacy, I don't think anybody argues that point, but what is the legacy? It is totally up to you. What community challenges exist, it is again up to every individual or group of people that get together to identify. All right, so the first item that I would like to present to you here is there has to be a coherence between the spiritual and the material. Activities in the field of social and economic development seek to promote well-being of people of all walks of life, whatever the beliefs or background. It represents the efforts of the community to effect constructive social change, as it learns to apply spiritual teachings together with knowledge accumulated in different fields of human endeavor to social reality. As we have seen, there are so many organizations throughout the world. Here in San Diego, we have 12,000 NGOs. And please somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think we have about 3 million people in the county of San Diego, if I'm not mistaken. So that is a lot of NGOs. Not all of them are active, but that's a lot of NGOs for 3 million people. And they're all doing great works. Most of the Mind Treasures staff are involved with many of these projects. But what the Baha'i community believes is that we cannot fix the challenges in the world just from the material aspects. Many of the projects that I'm involved with, they are training people in preparing food, there's emotional literacy, there's learning how to defend themselves, how to write resumes for a job. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, our financial literacy program, the ABCs of Wealth, is the only one that has brought spiritual aspects into finances. And it was inspired by the Baha'i writings. This is where we started from. So, and we see that even when we started this project, one of the GTF members said that we pray every day in the morning when we have our programs. And that's what we have to do. Often we are trying, either as an individual or a family or an organization, we are trying to address a challenge without relying on spiritual forces and guidance. And that is so important. We have to do that. So if anybody has any question, please type it in the chat. I am going through this and then we'll see. There are some areas that I'll ask more questions, but if you have any points, please feel free to list in them. the complexity and flow of resources. Some programs, some projects are small. For example, the idea about cleaning the washrooms, that could be a small project. But then paving the roads, that is a larger project. So while we can think big and think of the ultimate process as something grandeur, we need to start small. And then irrespective of the project, uh, we need to look at, so however the scope and complexity of social action at any given moment must be commensurate with the available resources, material and non-material, in a community to carry it forward. Um, we often have big ideas that we want to do something, and in our mind we think that it is doable. I know, I'm sure it is doable, but then we don't consider what resources are available to us. I have done this so many times. It's like, this is a great project. Again, going back to the literacy level in San Diego, Barry and a few others have been involved. One time we learned that there are a lot of people that receive government benefits, and they have to do something for it. They have to volunteer work. And initially, the response I got from a coordinator that works with those people, the person said, yes, there are about 8,000 to 9,000 people available, even in small areas. So our thought was that, wouldn't it be great to bring all these 9,000 people that are not doing anything and are receiving government benefits to the schools so they can just read to the children? And Barry knows what challenges we were faced with. They were not reliable. Part of the reason they were receiving government funding or government assistance was that they were not punctual. They would say they would come, but not show up. Only a few, we were able to do a few, but then we also hit a roadblock several times with the school system. So really considering we have ideas, but then what resources are available to make these projects go through. Another aspect is that ownership of the undertaking rests with the community itself. The idea might come from an individual person, but then the community has to get involved. Um, Example, Mind Treasures. My wife and I started the program, but now we see that little by little, it has taken still 15 years, that community, maybe not necessarily here in San Diego, but I could see that the education that we are providing outside of US, they are taking charge of the program. They see the value. You are seeing the value. So really, community has to take. So if we were to bring resources in the schools for literacy, our thought was that let's organize a group of people from within the community. And it just hasn't happened yet. Maybe the timing hasn't been right. Continuing to that is another principle, which is social change is not a project that one group of people carries out for the benefit of another. It has been many times seen that either a group of people or an NGO enters an area and they feel that they have the solution, they know what the problems are in the area, and they come with money, with resources, and they think that they can fix that. And we have seen how such programs have failed after spending millions and millions of dollars. We have seen that in San Diego, I am sure. So let's have this question. Are you aware of any project that was done by an outsider or a group of people in a neighborhood and it just did not work? So that is the next question. If anybody wants to chime in. There is one example you might have seen, watch the video, Play Pump. I will share a follow-up video to it, which attests to this point right here. What we have done at Mind Treasures is that so I live in a community that it is, so in our community, there are not that many challenges in the neighborhood where I live. But the classes that we do, we started the financial literacy classes in a few of the schools, but then there was no interest from the community, from our people here, because most parents were concerned with athletic projects, with cooking, with arts, which is they're all fine. But even after 15 years, parents have not been interested in utilizing the education that was born out of this neighborhood where my wife or our family lives. And it's just mind baffling. So 2 years after we started, we were introduced to an area where now majority of the program is being delivered. Initially, it was myself and then one other community member. For those of Ms. Barbara Day, who passed away a few months ago. She was a great support to the program. So we started working together a little bit. But now, as our staff know, majority of our facilitators are from the neighborhood where the program is being delivered. We still need a lot more support from the neighborhoods, from the community, but it is. And I'd like to ask Ms. Hazel, she always has a great story about how children in the community run into her in the supermarket. So Hazel, if you'd like to share that, I will read it. Or if you want to unmute yourself. I'm not sure why Hazel has not been able to unmute. Let's see if I can unmute her. Oh, I can. Miss Hazel, are you there? Oh, maybe her microphone doesn't work. Anyway, so we have really spent some effort to make sure that our facilitators come from the neighborhood where the programs are being delivered. That's another aspect. The other aspect, which is extremely important, is framework for collective learning. In our society, it is very much about I, me, and mine. And we're trying to remove those phrases and replace them with we, us, and ours. Being humble. So often people say, well, my organization does this, my team does this. This is mine. I came up with this idea. And we really need to change that because it is not me. Yes, Mind Treasures was established by my wife and I, but now it's a global. The whole humanity owns the project. It is beyond us because we have opened it up. Everyone can take the material and deliver it. So that is something that is not easy in our daily lives, but we need to have that conscious mindset of not saying, I did this, my team did that, my organization is doing that. It is, we are doing this, us, our organization is doing this. So as you've seen, as you've noticed, our staff are referred to as facilitators, not teachers. So we are also removing the phrases such as leaders, the terms leaders and followers, teachers and students, preachers, speakers, and listeners and audience, replacing with facilitators and tutors. I forgot to put that in there. And we are accompanying each other in the field of learning. There's so much to be learned. We think we know the solution to every single challenge, but it is really not that. There are many organizations that are so fixed on developing or mentoring leaders. And I cannot think but that none of the manifestations of God from the time of that there are books around from Moses, all the way Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, the Bab, and Baha'u'llah, as well as Buddha, Krishna, Zoroaster. None of them ever considered themselves a leader. In the Bible, it says, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. We need to learn that. It's like, why is it that we think we need leaders? Yes, not everyone carries the same weight. Everyone has a different talent. within Mind Treasures right now, I'm the only one who is, and this is actually my talent, is the spreadsheet. I love doing spreadsheets. And as you can see, our program, the ABCs of Wealth, is done on a Google Sheet. It's not done on a spreadsheet, not a app or something, because I don't have that expertise. So that has been my talent. But then every member of our group and our community has a different talent that they can bring in. It's not having leaders does not mean that we are all equal. We all carry a different weight, but then it removes that, oh, this person did this. It's like as a group, we learn and we did together. Another aspects of collective learning is to really learn from what has been done in the past. We don't need to reinvent the wheels. See if other organizations are around that we can, as we talked about yesterday and the day before. If we're trying to do a project and there's already an organization, we do not need to raise money to pay for a CFO, a CEO, a director, if there's already a setup in there. Let's tag along and do something. And then also, it is so important to document and share everything we're learning for the present and for the future. Our societies and technology is really helping us. And as you can see, many organizations are sharing their assets, what they have, including us, at no cost. Let me see, there are a couple of comments in the chat. It was funded by outside, but driven by community input and involvement. All right. Okay. And then Felicia says, right to play a project in basic schools in Ghana, but over the years it has faded away due to funding. That is a perfect example, Felicia. Thank you so much. We will see that often projects are driven by money, and we know that that doesn't work. It just does not work. Money is needed, but that should not be the driving force, and we will get to that. I may need to go a little faster because I did not time this. So universal participation, everyone in the community has to be involved in the projects. Not everyone in every project, but then everyone should feel that they have a stake in the project, a say into the project, particularly children and youth. We often underestimate their power. We think that as adults, we have all the answers and we have all the energy. And that could be it is not right. We may know a little bit, we may have a little bit more experience that could work both for the project and also against the project. Because our way of thinking is old. We think, oh, this has been tried before, but cannot be. So any project that we do, we definitely need to get children and youth involved. We have not done so much of that for Mind Treasures, except just presenting the material, but hoping that this has been always the case. We've been trying, it just has not presented, the opportunity has not presented. Another aspect is building capacity. So often organizations or people provide a service to another group of people. And that's all it is saying. We are actually, Mind Treasures is involved with one of the government institutions here that they constantly refer to organizations that are involved as service providers. That's all they think about. There has never been that, oh, let's build capacity within the group that we are working with to empower them, to basically teach them how to fish instead of just giving them a fish. So that's very important. And again, those capacities can be built from very young age. We have seen that in work. We know that it does work. Then the next step is planning, expansion, consolidation, reflection, and consultation. So the plan that we come up together has to be based on the realities and available resources. What is available in the community, and not necessarily relying on outside sources, because outside sources come and go. As Felicia said in there, there's been projects that has been done based on outside money. They are done for maybe 1, 2, 5, 10 years, but then they disappear. As soon as the money is gone, it is gone. But we know that there are a lot of human resources in every community. and particularly when we combine it with the spiritual powers. Uh, all right, expansion. Often we love to just expand very quickly. And sometimes we are even forced. One of our sponsors, one of Mind Treasure's sponsors, every time I have a conversation with them about funding that they are providing, their main concern is why we are not expanding faster. Why is it that we are stuck at only working with about 1,000 students in San Diego? And I have tried to relate to them, and several times Barry knows, every time I come out of a meeting with them, I feel like, why are we working with this organization? But I'm hoping that their mindset will be changed. And if at some point of time they decide not to sponsor the program, that would be fine. But they're not the only sponsor. We are not solely relying on their sponsorship. Consolidation. Again, often we expand very quickly, and we're in such a hurry to expand that we forget about those that came in contact with the program, that they need, we need to work with them. For example, we did this program, the ABCs of Wealth, over this 2 weeks. We introduced many aspects in here. So it's going to take time for individuals and families to develop that budget. It's not an easy thing to do, to start teaching their children. And we are making it a commitment to be with you as long as I am making that commitment. I cannot speak for our staff, but I'm making a commitment that we are here to work with you as long as it takes. We need to reflect on process, and that's part of the learning process of what do we put into the project? What is the outputs? We'll talk more about outputs and outcomes. And what would lead to further learning and adjustments. Social action projects are not a fixed project, a cookie cutter. We cannot say, oh, we did this project in San Diego, so the same problem exists in Accra. Let's take this project and implement it there. We are giving you tools, we are giving you a framework, but we've never said, oh, just because it worked here, it's going to work there. Process of consultation. Many people are attached to their ideas. We come up with the idea and we keep on pushing and pushing and pushing and saying that I think we need to do this, I need to think we do this. But that is not the true spirit of consultation. As soon as we provide an idea to the group, we need to become, it is not my idea anymore. It belongs to the group, it belongs to the community. I can present several times my idea with what I think is the pros and what is the con, how this can benefit the community, but then I need to let the group decide on how to proceed with this and not be attached to my idea and my way of doing things. The planning process, again, reading the community reality and formulating a vision in the group, even if an idea may start from an individual or one or two people. This is something I would like everyone's input on. Avoiding stereotypes, such as this is what we do in US. We call rest of the world, some part of the world, as third world. Here in US, it is expected that when we do a social action project, we identify the communities that we work with as low to moderate income, or LMI. We are forced to identify them as underserved or underbanked in the financial system. So in the chat, if we can write, if such a negative phrases, anything similar to this is used in your country, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Uganda, what are some of the negative phrases that are used to define or stereotype groups of people that are still learning how to elevate their social and economic condition? The other things that we need to look at is what resources are available that can be put into the project. as an input. As Felicia said, and we've seen it many times, a lot of times money is the first consideration. Let's raise so much money to do this, but we are not looking at the human resources. And if we've seen, we are all born rich. And I said not where, because sometimes people may say, I was born rich. And I don't think that's a correct statement, because our richness, our spiritual muscles are born with us as soon as we are conceived in the mother's womb, and will continue staying with us through eternity. We talked about we should look at wealth that's needed for any social action project in all different forms: knowledge, expertise, talent, time, money, as well as physical, mental, emotional, spiritual powers. And then we definitely need to look at material means also. There's money, facilities, technology, internet. All these are all the things that we have to consider when we're doing a project. And I think that's the last one. No, that's the last one. All right. The next one is about predetermined outcomes or outputs. It is very easy to think about, well, I'm going to raise so much money to educate so many people. And having such predetermined goals and outcomes often lead to disappointment, because we set our mind on something that may or may not be attainable. And so in opposed to that, process of learning is much more powerful and impact than achieving preset attainable goals. This does not mean that we do not have goals. We do have them, but they are not focus of the project. For example, every time Mind Treasures, we write a proposal, we have to say we are asking for $25,000 to educate 2,500 students. Our cost here in San Diego is about $100 per student. So we do that just to justify, say that, yes, if you give us this much money, that's what we know, that's what we can develop. And luckily, most of the sponsors have been good with the stories that we provide, not necessarily what can be accomplished. There was one entity that was really asking us, begging us to say, what outcome can we provide? And we just refused. We just refused that. We cannot provide any predetermined outcome. One example would be, we could say 50% of students that go through our program will establish a savings account in a bank. It is easy to say, but that would be totally outside of our powers. So Barry says, in Ghana, my friend at Joy to the World Christian School refers to her students as needy but brilliant children. That is one way. That reminds me, one of our teachers here, that our Miss Judy is a every year partner. She refers to her students, this is third grade, she refers to her students as innovators. It's all over her classroom. And anytime I have said students, the teacher, Miss Kramer, gives me a dirty look. It's like, Alex, they're not students, they are innovators. Yes, I'm very sorry. So we can always find positive ways to refer to the people that we work with, not the negatives. Again, as we saw, I think it was the day before, it is very easy to see people's faults and not their potentials. So we need to change that process in the social action projects that we are doing. Even when our community is begging to identify different groups in the negative ways. We need to put our whole trust in the spiritual powers. We need to become a hollow reed that let the spiritual powers guide us and do their work. And that is why it's so important. And a perfect example is, I think, this program. Hopefully we don't run out of time. When we started with GTF, it was only about 5 days. 5 days became 10 days. And since this morning that I've been talking with Emmanuel, I don't think we're done anytime soon. We're going to be working together for a long time. Not that I didn't want to, but I just did not know how we would be working together. Isaac says, someone referred to some youth in my community as vision, as Visionless people. Okay, Isaac, can you elaborate on that? I'm not sure. Uh, but we have seen that youth are referred to as a lost cause. Oh, just and children, just let them play. They don't know. They don't understand. They don't need to be involved. So coming back to this here, uh, while we do look at some numerical values, again, if we get this much money, the reality is that we can teach so many or work with so many people. But that should not be the driving force. That is only one of the measurement tools that we have to make sure that we are not overspending and always trying to reach more a larger population with the funding and with the resources that we have. Irma says, in our advocacy choir, we call our neighbors needing homes as unsheltered rather than homeless. There we go. We can always find a positive. We need to turn that around, even though, again, governments and large organizations and sponsors, they want to put everybody down. And the most important part of the program is accomplishment stories. That's what needs to happen. During our process, we have to be ready for calamities, hardships, challenges, obstacles, because without those, we cannot achieve progress, growth, and advancement. From the Bible, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And from Baha'i writing, it says, naturally, there would be periods of distress and difficulty, and even severe tests. But if that person turns firmly towards the divine manifestation, studies carefully his spiritual teachings, and receives the blessings of the Holy Spirit, he will find that in reality, these tests and difficulties have been the gifts of God to enable him to grow and develop. Okay, so thank you, Jade, for clarification. Visionless. Okay, I see it. So visionless youth, meaning that they have no plan for their future life. That is such a negative force to look at youth, but the energy is there. That is one of the things that the Baha'i community is doing. Majority of emphasis on the academic and spiritual education is on the children and youth, particularly in age 11 to 13, when they are leaving their childhood and getting into the youth years. That is such a confusing time that needs extra attention to bring them in. All right, we got one more slide. I guess timing worked well. God works its way through everyone. Patience, determination, perseverance is needed. Some projects may have well-defined starts and ends, while others may take years or decades or even centuries. Some of our current challenges have been developed over centuries, so naturally solutions will take a long time. A perfect example is our current problems here in the US, a racial injustice. This was not something that was introduced yesterday or 10 years ago. In our society, started back in the 1800s. So it is definitely going to take a lot of time, but we need to have the patience and perseverance. Many challenges are caused by greed, materialism, and forces of moral decay that we see all around the world. And those are the things that we are working against. But if we rely again, and the solution, I should have put that in here, and the solution to all of these is love, is reliance on God, and aligning our spiritual, our material lives together. So I know I talked a lot, but amazingly, it's right on time. So I'd like to open up just one last thing. So there is a project that Emmanuel is proposing for Ghana. He did record a video that we will share in the WhatsApp group. We will be working together to see who is involved with that project, and how do we apply the framework that we just went through to that project or any other project that anyone has. So, okay, question. So I'm going to stay quiet finally after 1 hour. and let anyone, we can probably stay a little longer. It is right at the end of our usual time. But if anybody has any question of how we're going to proceed, again, I cannot express my appreciation for everyone to come every day to the session, whether you're here live or will be watching the recording later on, and those who have even internet challenges that have been accompanying us in this process. I have personally learned a lot. I'd like to open it to our staff. If anyone from our staff would like to say anything in closing of this chapter of this camp.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who has participated. It has been a blessing to my life to be able to share the little that I know and have had experiences, and thank you to all the team members.
Jade also says, thank you everyone for participating in the sessions. We have all learned a lot throughout this camp and will continue to learn.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Yes, I was.
Right there. Barry? Barry, we lost you. Okay. Timothy says, thank you to the Mind Treasures team. I have learned a lot. It's an eye-opener. So thank you so much. We have learned again so much. Barry, are you coming back? Oh, we lost Barry.
I'm going to do that.
Technical difficulties. Even where we think our internet is so stable and so fixed, we still run into technical difficulties too. Barry, are you back?
Technical difficulties.
All right. Okay. All right. That's what it is. Okay. So if there's no question or anything, again, thank you so much. We'll end right here. We will continue in the WhatsApp group. There's still many videos that I like to share with everyone. The documents that I mentioned that these guidelines came from. So if anyone wants to dive into a little deeper, if you have projects that you would like to work on with the group or within your community, we need to put them into practice. Felicia says, okay, for the week-long lessons, I can't thank you enough, but only moving too fast. All right, so Barry put the chat in there. Again, we have learned so much too. It's all of us learning. Penny from Uganda, thank you so much, Penny, for being part of this project. I know we are going to do a lot in Uganda, and I cannot wait for us to travel to Africa. This is going to be exciting. Hopefully, we'll do that after the COVID-19 has finally settled down.
You're all welcome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night where you are, or day. I'm not sure if anybody's on this side of the world. Thank you. God bless you.